Hey guys, it's GirlGotGame. Welcome back to London Detective Mysteria as the time ticks down to our final route, which is the grand end, or true end, or however you'd like to define it. So, in order to do this ending, we need to start over from the prologue and then, when prompted, open something. So, that's what I'm doing. We're in the prologue. Our tale begins as the curtains close on the 19th century. This evening is as ordinary as they come for London, England. Mist hangs thick, beclouding the radiance of the moon and modest glow of gas lamps. Now, a word of caution, if I may. Take care on the streets tonight. It wouldn't do for you to become the target of villains lurking in the shadows. Even Scotland Yard, the pride of our city, has yet to solve the many terrifying incidents that hide comfortably in its seediest corners. Most perhaps would scurry away with this advice, then stroll blissfully into a trap. You strike me as an unusual sort, however, so should you find yourself drawn to the unsolvable, steel your nerves and see your case through to its end. Take solace in knowing that London is home to more than the purely unjust, for the just find their places amongst the likes of brilliant detectives and fearless gentlemen thieves. The curtain may soon close in the 19th century, yes, but upon the resounding chime of Big Ben, a new tale of love and adventure like no other begins. On a foggy, moonlit night. Alright. Yeah, I thought we should replay the prologue because it's been a long time. So if there's any pertinent information left in there, let's just go in order and see how it all flows together and see if we can figure out Pendleton's deal. That's the only mystery I really... Well, that's not the only mystery. That's one of the main mysteries I want to figure out. And of course, Emily's parents' murder. And a whole bunch of other things. I also still have not seen Mycroft this entire time. So he better show his stupid face in this one. I need to know if Sherlock Holmes had two sons and named one Mycroft, like a dum-dum, and then his other son Herlock, or if Mycroft had a son and Mycroft and Herlock are actually cousins. It's pertinent information that I need to know. That's all I want to get out of this. Oh, and also, who's actually in control of Spellbound? That also might be pertinent information to know, so hopefully.
Good evening, my lady. I see you have finished a number of stories.
Pendleton pointed to a book on the table.
Yet, with this last one here, the key to the truth will finally be in your grasp.
Dang! Pendleton's breaking the fourth wall.
I am your butler, a mere servant in your employ. Yet, would you humor my request to act as your guide? And if I may warn you, once you choose to open this book, you shall be overcome by the words within. Now then, are you ready to seek the truth?
Should I open this book? Yes! Alright, I didn't think it was gonna start so quick. I thought it was gonna be, like, later. Alright, good thing we started right from the prologue.
Very well. Then allow me to open it for you. Again, I must state, the truth, whatever it may be, awaits you along this road. With that said, close your eyes and entrust yourself to the story you've chosen.
Okay, Pendleton. To be continued. That's the fastest chapter we've ever done. London Underground. I wonder if this whole story is broken up into chapters. It'd be so interesting. The stage was set in Montmartre, Paris, France, 340 kilometers south of London. Whoever this is.
Greetings, detectives of London. How fares your investigation? What's that? Too busy with schoolwork and frolicking about with friends. Oh, I quite understand.
Who? What? delicious restaurant in the back? Hold. Time out. What the dingleberry is this? Wait a minute. You can't start me into a new story and like, here's a character you've never seen before. Like, what? Alright.
Now, I have observed that winters in Paris are much warmer than London's.
Oh boy, I love this boy's poses already.
But this northern wind is so dry. Makes my bed irresistible in the mornings. Waking up has turned into an ordeal, let me tell you. There is but one thing I find worth starting my day for, however.
Oh, he's very excited about his hot chocolate. Why are you drinking hot chocolate where there's like Italian delicious restaurants behind you?
Here we are, a cup of thick, piping hot chocolate. It bears mentioning that I say this as an Englishman, and we English are known for our love of tea. You know of the Boston Tea Party, yes? Our tea, you know, terrible waste. Yet I dare say I prefer the French way. Here, people couple their gâteau au chocolat with more hot chocolate. You ask if we ever tire of indulging our sweet tooth? You poor dear. Tea time in France without chocolate is like a coffin without a corpse. Well, I suppose it ought to be called chocolate time than tea time, but I digress. You there! Just where is my morning paper? Here you are, sir.
Underling? Oh no, you're not the guy in charge of Spellbound, are you? I mean, he's crazy enough.
For God's sake! Any chap with half a mind would have left it next to my pillow without me asking. Do you know? Even you must know the joy of reading a paper so hot off the presses that the ink is not yet dried. It is one of life's 300 greatest pleasures. My apologies, sir. Oh, you are useless. It hurts me more than it does you. Now let's see. Another case solved for Her Majesty's Detective Emily Whiteley. Ah, the little orphan girl. She is head of her household also, no? Great Britain is ruled by a queen, and so its people rejoice any woman who fights to defend her country. I suppose one might call her a miniature queen, groveling retainers and all. But power always requires a symbol. The ring on her hand is hers. It signifies her role as one trusted by the queen. My daddy oh so loves people with power. I hope that won't prove to be his undoing.
Your daddy? I have so many questions. Who was that? When November reached its halfway point, Pendleton presented, as he always did around this time of the month, his report on the investigation. Grand. It's been ages. Hit me up with it. Also, I still have my mouse on the screen. Good job, me. I was so distracted by the boy and the Italian restaurants, I just left my mouse on the screen. Good job, me.
Would now be a good time to update you on the investigation, my lady.
Yes, please do. Pendleton sifted through a bundle of papers in his hands. He only stopped when he found one in particular, which he presented.
Have a look at this.
It was a list of names. Nearly all of them had been crossed out in black ink. What is this?
All of these people were in that photograph. It took no time to find who they were. However, I regret...
I knew what he would report about these names before he finished the sentence, for the seriousness of his lips said plenty.
I regret to inform you that nearly all of them are dead. The most recent was only a year ago.
Then that leaves only 2 people in that photograph who are still alive. The Queen and this boyo.
Her Majesty the Queen and Earl Beckford, yes.
So many smiles. It was uncomfortable to know that only 2 were left. Buckingham Palace was never lacking in security, and no person or organization had the means to conquer it. It was clear who would be the next target. We'll have to hasten our investigation. So, were you able to speak with Earl Beckford?
No. I went to visit him, but he wasn't at his mansion in London at the time. I'm told that he's currently in Edinburgh on a business trip, but he will be returning soon.
You did well. I'm just worried. If the only survivors are him and Her Majesty, then I hope nothing has happened to him.
Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but he has periodically received letters of a threatening nature. Not as many of late, but the news does cause some alarm.
It does. Might you arrange for us to meet as soon as he returns?
Of course. Now, as part of my continued report, I thought to investigate the servants who once worked at this mansion.
How far back? The ones in service to my parents upon their deaths?
Precisely that. It isn't unthinkable for one of them to have seen something. If they did, they would be a target as well. We, too, are witnesses to the crime in that same vein, but we mustn't ignore the welfare of others if it is within our power to keep them safe. I'm pleased to say the former head maid now lives in the suburbs of London with her husband and son.
If you're pleased, then may I assume nothing has happened to her?
That is correct. I'm beginning to suspect there is something greater at play here, a criminal organization or some other power. How could someone acting alone disguise all these murders as suicides or accidents?
Yes. Yes, you're absolutely right. These deaths are varied and far apart, but whether done alone or in cooperation, if these deaths are in fact murders, then it is still a serial murder case we face. We must speak with the Earl as soon as possible. He could be living in fear of being targeted, unable to confide in a single person for fear they would be his killer.
Certainly, I suppose. I shall contact him upon his return and arrange a meeting.
Thank you.
But please, take caution. The more openly you seek the truth, the more danger is eager to pounce from its hiding place.
Not to worry. I understand that well. We shall see, Emily. Several weeks passed, and with each of those came a stark drop in heat. It was no cause of worry, for the cold brought Christmas, and the students could not get enough of discussing their celebratory plans. Bundled cheeks which turned red from both weather and delight could be seen. Indeed, the sudden chill marked a marvelous occasion.
December is almost here, and Christmas is right around the corner.
So it is. It's my first one since coming back to London, so I'm looking forward to it. I celebrated it before I moved, mind. We would pray at the church and sing Christmas carols, but it was a rather quiet affair. I'm sure it's much more lively in London. The streets are ripe with festivities and cheer already.
Oh, but of course! I've seen cards being sent, gifts being bought, and Christmas crackers being prepared for the big day.
It must be nice to celebrate such a holiday at home. For those who cannot see their families for Christmas, however, there will be a party held in the dormitory's dining hall.
Haha, can't get much farther than us either. Halfway around the world is no mean feat.
I'm compelled to ask, do you two know what Christmas is about then?
Of course. It is a day to celebrate the birth of Christ, give thanks to your family whilst you dine, and exchange presents. Have I got it right?
Not a thing missed. It's a time meant to be spent with family, so everyone just loves it.
I know! You ought to join the dormitory's party, Emily! The head did say it was all right to invite friends.
I would note, Kobayashi, that as much as I should like her to join us, we're arranging this party in the boys' dormitory. To invite her would be crass.
I guess. It's a real shame. Though that's what comes from living in a dorm.
Indeed. The invite warms my heart nonetheless, so thank you. Akachi and Kobayashi both expressed their concern for me plainly. For that, I was grateful.
Ah, but the two of us must be going. We've investigations that need looking into. Pardon us.
See you tomorrow!
After their goodbyes, they retired from the classroom. How do you celebrate Christmas in your family, Marple?
We all gather in Grandmother's house and decorate the tree together. We're a large family, so...
Marple quite suddenly fell silent mid-sentence.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That was insensitive of me.
Ah, I knew why she was suddenly earnest. She recalled my parents. Nonsense. I was the one who asked. It must be loads of fun with so many people.
I imagine Pendleton is planning your Christmas at the mansion as we speak.
He wouldn't be Pendleton if he weren't always so prepared. I smiled to lift her spirits, but I was aware that Pendleton would not be waiting upon my return. The events of the night before made certain of that. This chapter's moving. This story's moving too quickly. Wait, what happened to Pendleton?
It's time I depart, my lady. You must forgive me for having to leave you like this, but I trust you will do splendidly in my absence.
I shall endeavor to, Pendleton. You take care.
I know that this time of the year is a busy one. It is a terrible time to be elsewhere but here, with December of all months being upon us.
Don't speak that way when it's the first time you've taken leave. When was the last time you were home? I don't mind you placing yourself first from time to time, you know.
You have a good heart, my lady, but I fear for what may happen if you're left alone.
Oh? Do you have that little faith in me? I'll be all right, I swear. A bit lonely, but I'm not a child anymore.
If you insist, then I will leave knowing you're safe even in my absence. I only ask you stay that way. Do not go looking into that case. I wouldn't want anything to happen to you when I cannot remedy it.
Don't worry, I'll be on my best behavior.
And please, do not tell anyone other than the servants that I am away. One can never be too cautious.
Pendleton, as always, expressed an unduly protective nature where I was concerned. Stop fretting and go.
I really should. I'll be returning in 1 week.
That's perfectly fine. Give my regards to your family. Pendleton has a family? I guess everybody's got a family. It's just weird to think of him going to visit them for Christmas. What are you up to? Ah, okay. That was just a show for the servants. Gotcha. That makes much more sense. He isn't home to make plans, but I can't tell anyone that. Oh no, Emily just meant that he's not at her home making plans because he's, I still don't know. I don't know what's happening. I told him to place himself first this year as well. It wouldn't be right to say that and then expect him to plan a Christmas party.
Oh, I didn't know it was so late. Excuse me, I really must be going.
All right. Have a pleasant evening, Marple.
The same to you, dear.
Good old Marple. I bid her farewell with a modest wave as she left the classroom. And hello, you two. I was wondering when you were going to show up.
How are you planning on spending this Christmas, Holmes? We'll see. Father said he'll be concocting our meal after we've returned from church. He's strangely excited for it. I don't know what to expect, if I'm honest. Is he? Mum's been running around getting everything ready for us. It'll be the first time in a while that the three of us have all come together.
Glancing over, I could see Holmes and Watson were the rule over the exception, as they too had begun cheerily discussing their plans. It had been so many years since then. Christmases had come and gone, some delightful, others quite sad, but one would think that after so many, loneliness would be behind me. Yet all it took was to see the excitement that festered the air for that hollow emotion to creep in. They don't know how lucky they are. I wish Mother and Father were still here. Holmes called out to me, taking me out of my thoughts.
Miss Whiteley, what is it? You appear distracted by something.
Oh, Holmes, I'm not.
Is something troubling you?
No, nothing of the sort. You needn't fuss. Thank you for asking, but really, I'm in wonderful spirits. Enough of this. Before you could press me further, I needed to leave. Good day to you, Holmes.
Right. Good day to you as well, Miss Whiteley.
Come on, Holmes, invite her over for dinner. There was something knowing in Holmes's expression, and I had no desire to contemplate what his observant eye had discovered in me. Once in the corridor, I slowed to a walk. A lonely, dreary walk. Oh, I'm such a fool. There's no hiding anything from him.
Dear, oh dear. She'll always be a terrible actress.
Yeah, but you like her anyway. So invite her over for dinner. I rode the carriage home, as I did every day after school.
Welcome home, milady.
Thank you, Alicia. A part of me wished for the comfort of a routine. A part which was, as I knew it would be, dashed by not seeing Pendleton at the door. I missed his afternoon greetings. Why, I even missed his quips and criticisms of my manners. It feels so quiet in the mansion today. So much has happened of late that I'm no longer used to it being like this. I trotted up to my bedroom and observed my family portrait. To think there was a time when all three of us lived and breathed. To think it was all so distant. To think it at all was to think too much. Pendleton had remarked once that father was an avid painter. He would often paint both friends and family to pass the time. I remembered none of this. I was so young then that I perhaps never had the chance to see him be a hobbyist between his hours of being a parent. This portrait was painted the same year they died. I was so little, I wouldn't have been able to change anything at such an age, even knowing what I know now. Mother is wearing Her Majesty's ring with her wedding ring. She must have treasured it with all her heart. I brought this painting back with me to London, but until then it had been displayed in the countryside mansion. The room depicted was a living room, and though it had the very exact walls, the same crown molding, the precise pattern in the carpet as the mansion I lived in now, it was not the same. Down to the finest details, my current home had been designed to be a replica over the original's ashes. I wondered how many paintings my father did. I would never know, for the fire had stolen all but the one. Or had it? It was now something I treasured deeply. And more than a treasure, it was my resolve laid bare to all who saw it. I would, no matter how many years passed, find their murderer. I'm proud that Her Majesty told me how my mother often helped her, how she helped anyone in need, how they'd come to depend on her, how she earned that ring through her good deeds. A terrible gale was outside tonight. The windows rattled, the mansion settled itself with a low hum. These sounds and my portrait, made through a beautiful mix of paints and framed in gold for beauty's sake, gave me hatred. I could wish to forget, but these things would always be there, and they would mumble dark lullabies to my ears each night till my work was done. This I knew. The wind was like this back then, too. I'm lonelier than I thought I'd be without Pendleton. If only he were here to keep me company. In the few seconds I stepped away from the window to open the door, Alicia had appeared on the other side.
My lady, your friends Holmes and Watson have come to visit.
I jumped back. Really? When it's so late in the day? Though I asked with incertitude, I was equally relieved by their timely arrival. Good job, boys. I made my way back down the stairs to greet them.
Good evening, Emily. Sorry to come so late.
Is it urgent? I was quite surprised to learn you were here.
Not that I'm aware. It was Holmes who insisted I come. Ow! Ow!
Oh no.
I insisted, or were you like a pup having found a bone upon my invitation?
You two love her so much. To see them as they always were gave me that normalcy I needed in that moment.
I don't know why it's been so windy today. Hearing it is one thing, but coming here in it was some kind of ordeal. Where's Pendleton? He always greets us at the door with you.
Really? Oh, what a sudden question to ask. I wasn't prepared for anyone to ask it, so I had no answer to give. There was no reason for them to know he was gone before coming here, surely.
Best not to lie now. I know he isn't here.
Holmes was so emboldened with confidence that my own grew twice limited. My response was timid. What makes you say that?
After lessons were done, you seemed unconcerned with the time, as you often are. You had no case to occupy your time otherwise, and without one your curfew applies. There was your mother's necklace, which you keep under your blouse. You were periodically clutching it throughout the day.
Perhaps I was, but what does this have to do with Pendleton?
Have you not noticed your habit of holding it when you feel uneasy or lonely? I have, so I had to wonder what the cause might be. That your butler isn't home is one such possibility. So, how right am I?
I didn't know what to say. The speculation was simply too on the mark. You're right. I'm not good at playing pretend.
There is one other matter that bears mentioning. You have no case to occupy your time that we should know of. One that concerns your family.
How do you know that?
I spotted you taking notes in the library's reference room. Among the notes were 2 people with the same surname as yours. Those would be your parents, I imagine.
You imagine right. Don't look! And so I looked to the left of him before flickering back to him. Don't look! And so I looked to the right of him before that failed as well. Don't look! And so I lowered my chin and kept my eyes to the floor. I didn't like this one bit.
Your parents' case was quite known at the time, I've come to learn. It was easy for me to dig up articles on the incident in the reference room.
And I have the clue that will break this case wide open after looking at it for 5 minutes.
They listed you as missing, and after a short investigation, your parents' deaths were declared an accident. But funny thing about you, they never spoke of your status beyond missing ever again. In the 12 years between then and now, you, the sole survivor, were raised somewhere away from the public eye. Then you chose to come back to the new Whiteley mansion, a stunning work built over the one that had been razed. Holmes.
Watson carried an air of concern, as though he hoped Holmes would know when to stop. That's a big hope. I merely shook my head. Carry on, Holmes.
What inspired you to return to London? Was it to attend school? To work? It was neither of those things. You returned for a very specific purpose. To find something. Yes, a very certain something. You wanted to find the truth behind their deaths.
The silence was soon an awkward one. First it was Watson. Now it was Holmes, whose voice vibrated with that same concerned anguish.
Will you not speak with us on your case? That's what brought us here. Please, Emily. We want to help you.
All right. But you must swear not to repeat a word of this to anyone. Wow, she's so trusting of her friends. How had they managed to learn so much on their own? Did it matter anymore? Certainly to hide what was now known any longer was an act of foolish resistance. Both boys nodded. With delicate hesitance, I motioned to relay my story. That clock again. Until I was 4 years old, I lived in London with my mother and father. Father was kind, mother was wise, and all of the servants loved me. My life was one of bliss. It was a windy night. So windy, in fact, that I could hear it howling from my bed. All other noise in my home had been drowned out by this one blistering sound. All except one. A strange sound, a sound I had never heard before, which was coming from my parents' room next to mine. I woke to that sound, which made me terribly ill at ease. I then left my bed in hopes of knowing its source. I crept outside, opened their door to peek inside, and saw everything. Mother and father were still. There, sunk into my mother's chest with even the silver of its heel colored a deep red, was a knife. I wanted to run. Oh, how I wanted to run! To move! But no part of me moved. Not my feet, not a twitch from my mouth, nor even my fingers on the door frame. Run! 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 Why didn't I move? I couldn't. Fear had bid me numb. It was just then that I felt someone grasp my trembling hand. Pendleton, who was the family butler even back then. He, too, was tense in a way I'd never seen. He grabbed my hand as tightly as he could before leading me from the mansion to safety. It wasn't long before it caught fire. All the papers the next morning reported them as having burnt to death in the blaze, but I knew. I had seen more than a simple accident. I saw a man, a knife, a murder. Had Pendleton not come to my aid and led me away, I would have certainly been murdered alongside them. I absconded to an old house in Chipping Campden of the Cotswolds, northwest of London. That was where my father had spent his childhood, and now it was where I could spend mine. It became a second home to me. Yet this was no cause for joy for some time. I had closed myself off from the world and was reluctant to speak to anyone. What good could come from a world that had taken everything from me? It was thanks to the land, Pendleton's tireless care, and the kindness of our neighbors that my heart gradually healed. But in pain or healing, I was the same once the sun set. I often bored a hole at that painting on the wall every single night when I lived there, thinking, why? Why were mother and father gone? Why were they murdered? Who did it? And for what? Everyone trusted them, loved them. When help was needed, they would go to them. Who took that away? The questions came in an endless cycle that tormented me even when I became a young woman. Every single time I asked myself those things, my desire to go back to London and find the man behind that night grew with a fever. All those thoughts filled me to the point of overflowing as I clung to the pendant my mother bequeathed me upon her death.
What a story. To think you've been pursuing this case for 12 years.
I want more than anything to find who is responsible for their murders. But so far...
Have you learned of any leads?
A few. I've not found any groundbreaking clues, but my investigation has unearthed some small leads. Permit me to share them with you. I inspected the photograph of my parents and the nobles with whom they were close. See here. This is a photograph depicting my parents and their friends. All of them are graduates of Harrington Academy. My mother was given one of Her Majesty's rings also. What links these people beyond the photograph are their deaths. One after another they have been perished. The first and second were mother and father. Their remains were discovered in the mansion as little more than ashes. You know from the papers that this was labeled some days later as bad luck involving a random fire, and two people who could not escape their home in time. It was, in short, an accident. The third was 2 years after. Baron Stanley, the gentleman right here, died under peculiar circumstances. He proposed measures to the government to improve conditions in the slums that used neighboring countries as a model. He was a humanitarian at heart and did much volunteering. How strange for such an upstanding man to become so drunk that he would fall and drown in the river. His body was discovered along the side of the Thames. 4 years later was Professor Randolph, who entered an excited state through excessive consumption of elixir. He then committed suicide by jumping from the window of his third-floor flat. An autopsy concluded an instantaneous death due to head trauma from the fall. Odd how they ignore the unnatural injuries to his neck as well. 3 years after that, Viscount Quincy, a trader, was trampled by a carriage whilst drunk. He died from his injuries. Beyond his death, I would note that Viscount Quincy had a string of misfortunes following him no matter his actions. His parents became severely ill, and the business venture he invested in failed very suddenly, to name 2 things.
I have to wonder how all of these were reported as accidents or suicide.
Is it morning now?
Even your parents' murders. Have you ever testified before the police?
I have, but they never did a follow-up investigation. The entire mansion was gone, and evidently my parents' remains were so charred that no one could prove or disprove that a stabbing had taken place.
What frustrating circumstances to be in. But if all of them were murdered by the same culprit, then why? What more do they have in common?
After their graduation, they became founding members of the Harrington Welfare and Education Foundation, formed to better the lives of those in need. In particular, they hoped to support the children of the slums. It still runs, and I'm sure it's grown substantially in these years. But consider this. You have so many founding members, and yet only Earl Beckford amongst them lives.
I see. What's this?
Following Holmes's eyes, I realized he was staring at a half-open drawer. How unusual. That one was ordinarily locked. Only Pendleton had the key. Pendleton, what you doing? Did he really leave it open like that? He's always kept it locked and refused to tell me what's inside. The only thing we found was a bundle of old iron keys. They look so old, and I've never seen them before. I wonder what they open.
If Pendleton felt the need to have them specially secured, then I would wager it unlocks somewhere close. Within the mansion, perhaps. Though if it's your first time learning about them, it's not improbable for it to open outside of it as well. May I see them?
I obliged and gave them to him. He spared many seconds for them, squinting intently, turning each one over and examining them from every odd angle he could entertain.
The metal has deteriorated so that they must indeed be old. A decade at the youngest. Have you not familiarized yourself with every part of this mansion?
I've left everything to Pendleton, I admit.
God, does that ever boggle the mind? Was the reconstruction recent?
Yes, this mansion was only built a few years ago.
Do you think these keys opened a room that was destroyed in the fire, then?
It's that, or they opened the one part that wasn't lost. The basement. Yep. I recall a small door I never noticed before when I was last down there. It was locked, and always has been, to my knowledge. I don't know if anyone under my employ has opened it. Could it be?
Why don't we try it?
But that would... These keys could potentially lead me to a part of the mansion I had never explored. Could they? Oh! But would they? Would I? Holmes and Watson both growled with an appetite for the unknown. I reasoned internally. Pendleton had expressly warned me not to look into the case whilst he was gone. What was it, though? Something as innocent as turning a key to see if it opened a door had nothing to do with his warning. And if it didn't, the investigation was done. But what if it did? Very well. One might consider he left it open for me. We decided as a group to descend to the basement.
Yes! That's what I was hoping you'd say!
Alicia, would you bring us a lantern? Right away, milady. Alicia returned soon after with a lantern for us. As I reached for it with a grateful hand, she made to stop us. Beg your pardon, but may I inquire where those unlock? These keys? We just found them in the drawer. Her expression darkened with a seriousness I'd never seen from her. You don't mean the one that is always locked, do you? That one, yes. But my lady, you mustn't. Pendleton is ever so stern when he tells us that we're to keep away from that drawer. Alicia could not hide her confliction. That he's away should not mean... I will tell him what I've done when he returns. The mansion is my home. Please, let me do as I will. I don't believe it's improper for me to see more of where I live.
It shouldn't be. And if she's to be scolded, then we'll be scolded along with her. Isn't that right, Holmes? Only so that I may be a participant.
For knowledge. I relent then. Here you are. The lantern was ours. Take note of the basement's age. It has been here since I began work at this mansion, and there's no telling what you may discover should you go beyond its entrance. Please stay well. Thank you, Alicia.
I'll carry the lantern. And stay close. I'll be there to protect you if anything happens.
I will.
Well, we're sorted. Let us descend.
It was time to take the stone stairs which led to the basement.